Aria's world was a concrete symphony of scarcity and noise, centered in the cramped, damp apartment she shared with her mother, Aria. Aria was a woman whose hands were permanently cracked from endless minimum wage shifts, but whose voice, when she sang old Motown hits while doing dishes, held a tenderness that was Aria's first exposure to grace. Aria never saw the inside of a university lecture hall. Her education came from the hard curriculum of the streets. She had an undeniable raw talent, a voice that could claw its way out of the deepest heartache, a vibrato born of pure, untutored soul. She could sing anything, but she preferred the blues and R&B, songs of longing and defiance. When she sang in the abandoned subway tunnels for spare change, the acoustics turned her pain into a cathedral chorus. That voice was her inheritance, the one unshakable, glittering thing she owned. But talent doesn't pay rent, and the pressure cooker of poverty eventually warped her choices. When Aria fell sick, the medical bills mounted like insurmountable granite walls. Aria, barely 18, watched her mother fade and saw the legitimate doors to solvency slam shut. Desperation is a corrosive acid, and it burned away Aria's moral compass, leading her down the darkest alleys of the city. She started small, running low-level hustles, dabbling in drugs to numb the constant anxiety. Soon, survival became synonymous with degradation. She found herself in the neon-scarred world of late-night clubs and street corners, where she traded her youth and her body for cash to keep the lights on and buy Alera's medication. She compartmentalized her life, the loving, dutiful daughter by day, the haunted ghost by night. The drugs weren't just for numbing the pain of her reality. They were a shield against the man she saw staring back in the mirror. She spent her nights in a perpetual haze, yet the one place the haze always lifted was on the small, greasy stage of the Velvet Abyss, a dive bar on the edge of the industrial district. She didn't get paid to sing there. She just did it when the house band took a break, often accepting a drink or a meager handful of crumpled bills as thanks. It was there, amidst the stale beer, the desperate eyes, and the thrum of forgotten lives, that she met him. His name was Damon Vance. Damon was everything her world was not. Smooth-tailored, exuding the crisp scent of success and expensive cologne. He was the CEO of Phoenix Records, a man known for spotting diamond-in-the-rough talent and polishing it until it shone blindingly, occasionally burning out completely in the process. He watched her from a dark booth as she poured her soul into an Etta James cover, her voice cracking with authentic sorrow. After her set, as she was reaching for a coat that smelled faintly of smoke and regret, Damon appeared at her side. "That voice," he murmured, his gaze intense, assessing. "It doesn't belong here, Aria. It belongs on a stage where the lights are so hot you can feel the warmth from the cheap seats." Aria, weary and suspicious, simply stared at the expensive cut of the suit. "And where exactly is that stage?" Damon smiled, a slow, predatory expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I own the stage, sweetheart. I own the whole damn theater. Come with me. I can make those ashes burn bright enough to light up the whole country." His words, echoing the desperate hope she had buried years ago, were a lifeline. She saw not a man, but an escape route, a way to save her mother, a way to reclaim her dignity, a way to trade the grime of the street for the gilded cage of fame. It was the ember of her talent, finally finding the oxygen it needed, even if that oxygen tasted suspiciously like sulfur. The conversation that followed was brief, punctuated by promises of millions and freedom. By dawn, Aria had signed a preliminary agreement scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin, a tiny piece of paper that would soon define, and eventually destroy, the next chapter of her life. The transition was violent and swift. Damon Vance didn't do slow processes. He dealt in high-octane transformation. Within 2 weeks, Aria was pulled out of the Velvet Abyss and installed in a luxury high-rise apartment she couldn't afford and didn't feel she deserved. The drugs were flushed, the clothes were burned, and the past was to be spoken of only in hushed, dramatic marketing narratives. Damon gave her a new look, a new team, and a new moniker, Echo. He became the center of her universe, her mentor, her producer, her confidant, and her captor. He personally oversaw every detail. The songwriters, the vocal coaching, the brutal but effective media training that taught her to spin her hardship into authenticity. He was brilliant, a musical savant who knew exactly how to capture the raw, wounded power of her voice and package it for mass consumption. Their working relationship was intense, fueled by late nights in the studio, where the only witnesses were soundboards and empty coffee cups. Damon was tirelessly demanding, pushing her until her vocal cords bled, but the results were undeniable. Her first single, Concrete Echo, hit the charts like a shockwave, a raw, emotional track that combined urban grit with soaring pop melody. It resonated deeply with millions who felt forgotten. The professional boundary was the first thing to dissolve, an inevitable consequence of the power imbalance. Damon, handsome and commanding, made it clear that her success was tied to his approval, and his approval extended beyond the studio glass. He didn't ask. He simply absorbed her. One night, after a celebratory session for her first gold record, the line broke entirely. Their romance was not a tender shelter. It was a consuming, manipulative fire. For Aria, it felt like gratitude wrapped in validation. Damon gave her the stability she craved and the attention that replaced her former transactional exchanges. She convinced herself she loved him, mistaking control for passion, mistaking his possessiveness for deep devotion. He isolated her from her old life, even moving her mother to a quiet, suburban care facility where Damon could control access. "You need to focus, Echo," he'd say, his voice soft but steel-edged, running a hand through her hair. "The world is full of parasites waiting to take what I built for you. Only I know how to keep you safe and keep you shining." Her career exploded. Awards, global tours, magazine covers. Aria, now Echo, was the face of authentic pop, the girl who rose from the gutter. But the higher she flew, the heavier the weight of Damon's shadow became. Every decision, every interview answer, every friendship had to pass through his filter. The love was laced with resentment, and the passion with fear. She was a bird with wings of gold, but her feet were chained to Damon Vance's mahogany desk. The first real moment of clarity came during her first major royalty payment discussion. Damon presented the figures with a triumphant flourish. After accounting for development costs, executive management fees, and label recoupment, the figure landing in her personal account was barely enough to cover her mother's care for a few months. "Where's the rest?" she asked, her voice quiet but shaking. Damon laughed, a rich, dismissive sound. "Sweetheart, you're the face. I'm the engine. You have a penthouse, a security team, and the world's ears. That's the return on investment. The rest is business." The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She had traded one form of prostitution for another, only this time the price was her freedom and her future. The glamorous cage Damon had built was tightening around her, and a contract, which she had signed in a haze of desperation and hope on a cocktail napkin, was nothing more than a carefully crafted document of financial servitude. Her stardom was not hers. It was an extension of Damon Vance's empire. Echo's second album topped the global charts, solidifying her status as a generational icon. Yet behind a triumphant, confident smile on stage, Aria was crumbling. The reality of the contract, a masterpiece of legal exploitation, was consuming her. Damon's legal team had ensured he owned her masters, her publishing rights, and most terrifyingly, held an exclusive option on her services for the next decade, structured to perpetually keep her in debt to the label's investments. The atmosphere in their professional and personal lives became toxic, a volatile mixture of resentment and forced public affection. Damon could sense her growing rebellion, and his control tightened. He began to undermine her confidence, subtly suggesting that her success was purely a product of his direction, and that without him, she was just a street girl destined to fail. Finally, she had enough. After a heated argument where Damon publicly humiliated her for suggesting a track he didn't like, she walked out of a recording session and sought independent counsel. She found Martha Chun, a formidable, no-nonsense entertainment lawyer. Martha looked over the original contract, shaking her head slowly. "Aria, this is a masterclass in predatory contracts. It's not just bad. It's designed to ensure you never make real wealth. You're signed for life, and you're essentially working for pennies on the dollar, while Damon owns your legacy." The news was devastating. It wasn't just money she was losing. It was her agency, her hard-fought escape. The fear, the trauma of her past, the feeling of being used, it all flooded back. She felt Damon had simply formalized the transactional relationships of her street life, masking the exchange with fame and velvet curtains. The depression was immediate and deep. She canceled promotional appearances, citing exhaustion. The high-gloss apartment became a fortress of self-pity and dark thoughts. She stopped answering calls, stopped writing music, and the old, corrosive coping mechanisms resurfaced. She started dabbling again, seeking the familiar, quick escape from the crushing weight of her reality. She was Echo, the star, but she was a star who couldn't control her own gravitational pull, spinning out into a destructive orbit. Damon, realizing he was losing control of his most valuable asset, attempted both threats and charm. He sent flowers, then lawyers, then back to flowers. We're a team, baby. Don't let these parasites turn you against a man who saved you, he pleaded during one tearful phone call. But Aria saw through it now. Damon hadn't saved her. He had relocated her debt. The legal fight began, a brutal, drawn-out process that drained what little emotional energy she had left. Martha chin-fought hard, leveraging clauses about moral conduct, Damon's, not Aria's, and standard industry practices. But the contract was ironclad. The best they could hope for was a costly settlement, an exit fee that would leave her financially gutted but professionally free. During this deep, dark period, Aria finally understood the difference between inspiration and exploitation. Her voice was her only truth, and Damon had muzzled it. She spent weeks staring at her platinum records, feeling like they were monuments to her failure. The turning point came when her mother, now frail but lucid, visited her. Aria looked at her depressed, hollow-eyed daughter, the famous, beautiful Echo, and simply said, "Fame is just a loud noise, baby girl. The music, that's the silence underneath. You remember the silence. You find your way back." Illyria's words cut through the haze. Aria hadn't fought her way out of the gutter, just to be trapped in a gilded one. The fight to sever ties with Damon became less about the money and more about reclaiming the silence, the pure, unowned space where her music was born. The binding ink of the contract felt suffocating, but she started to see a small tear in the paper, a pinprick of light that represented freedom, no matter the cost. The eventual separation from Phoenix Records was less a victory and more a necessary amputation. After 18 months of agonizing legal maneuvers, Martha negotiated Aria's release, but the terms were punitive. Damon retained ownership of all her Echo-era masters, the copyrights, and received a hefty percentage of her future earnings for a limited time. Aria was financially starting from zero, but she was free of the binding ink. She immediately dropped the stage name, Echo, and retreated, becoming just Aria again. The media fed a narrative of creative burnout and management disputes by Damon's PR machine, speculated that her career was over. Aria didn't care. She found a modest house far from the city, focusing only on her mother's care and the painful, slow process of emotional recovery. It was during this quiet hiatus, when her biggest daily challenge was tending a small garden, that she met Liam. Liam was a music teacher at a local community center, a man whose hands were often stained with chalk dust and whose eyes held an easy, uncomplicated warmth. He was utterly untouched by the glamour and manipulation of the industry she knew. He didn't recognize Echo. He just saw Aria, the woman who came to his center sometimes to play the worn, upright piano in the corner. Their relationship grew slowly, rooted in genuine mutual respect and a shared love for the simple act of creation. Liam showed her how to write music not for commercial consumption, but for emotional honesty. He helped her trust her own instincts again, to see that her trauma and her resilience were not liabilities to be packaged, but powerful muses. He was the antithesis of Damon, encouraging without controlling, protective without possessiveness. For the first time, Aria experienced love that felt truly reciprocal, not transactional. The healing was profound, and a year into their relationship, Aria discovered she was pregnant. It felt like a miracle, a genuine new beginning that erased the scars of the past. They planned a life together, simple and grounded, far from the spotlight. The reality, however, was less idyllic. When their daughter, Luna, was born, beautiful and demanding, Liam struggled with the weight of responsibility. Aria, accustomed to navigating extreme crises, was ready for the challenge of motherhood, but Liam, facing the permanent shift in their dynamic and the pressures of providing, retreated. He was a good man, but he wasn't strong enough for the long haul. One rainy morning, 3 months after Luna was born, Liam left a note on the kitchen counter. "I love you both, but I can't do this. You're too strong for me, Aria. I'm sorry." The abandonment hurt, but it didn't shatter her. The old Aria might have collapsed, sought the quick escape, but the woman holding Luna was different. The betrayal from Damon had taught her about ownership. The abandonment by Liam taught her about self-reliance. Luna was not a project or a contract or a temporary validation. She was an undeniable, permanent purpose. Her daughter's wide, trusting eyes became Aria's new North Star. "All right, Luna," Aria whispered, rocking her baby girl. "It's just you and me. Let's make some music that matters." Aria realized that Damon's contract had taken her masters, but it hadn't taken her voice. Liam's departure had taken a partner, but it had given her a clearer focus. She was a single mother again, facing financial strain in a hostile industry. But this time, her hardship was fueled by love, not desperation. She started building a small home studio in the garage, powered by sheer will. Her new songs were different. They were infused with the tenderness of lullabies, the righteous anger of betrayal, and the deep, uncomplicated joy of holding her child. This was the music of a survivor, and it was undeniably her own. The road back was independent, arduous, and slow. Aria knew she couldn't sign with another major label. She took her remaining settlement money and, with the help of Martha Chun, founded Reverie Records, a lean, boutique label focused entirely on creator ownership and fair contracts. She surrounded herself with a small team of trustworthy, ethical people who believed in her vision and understood the value of her lived experience. Her first independent project was an EP titled The Motherload. She recorded it mostly in her garage studio, often with Luna sleeping in a bassinet beside the mic stand. The music was stripped down, raw, and brutally honest about addiction, exploitation, and the sudden profound love of motherhood. It wasn't the slick, expensive pop of her Echo days. It was soul music, born of concrete and courage. The industry initially ignored it, but the fans, the millions who had loved the real Aria beneath Damon's packaging, found it. They were hungry for authenticity. The Motherload didn't climb the charts. It broke them, fueled by grassroots support and critical acclaim that praised its unapologetic rawness. It was the anti-pop album of the decade, a testimony to reclamation. Aria learned the business side of the industry inside and out. She became a meticulous executive, reading every line of every contract, understanding logistics, and mastering the complex world of distribution and streaming revenue. She refused to be leveraged or manipulated again. She used her platform not just to sell records, but to educate other young artists on predatory deals. Her albums that followed, Phoenix Rising and The Unwritten Score, cemented her legacy. She had evolved from a flash-in-the-pan sensation into a true, enduring artist. Her fame became self-sustaining, based not on image or scandal, but on profound depth of her music. 15 years after signing that fateful cocktail napkin, Aria stood on the stage of the Global Music Awards. She was no longer the haunted, desperate girl, nor the puppet Echo. She was poised, elegant, and radiated the quiet, formidable power of someone who built her empire on her own terms. She wore a tailored suit and her hair was pulled back, revealing the strong, determined lines of her face. She was accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award, a premature honor, but one recognizing her immense impact on both the music and the business side of the industry. Her label, Reverie Records, was now one of the most respected independent powerhouses in the world. Damon Vance, whose career had declined after a string of ethical scandals, was a footnote. Her acceptance speech was brief, cutting through the usual platitudes. "I started my life with nothing but a voice," Aria said, her voice clear and steady, amplified for the entire world. "That voice took me down some very dark roads, and I lost my way. I was told my worth was conditional. I was told my talent was owned. I was told I was disposable." She paused, scanning the crowd. But the beautiful thing about a lie is that the truth can always sing louder. And the beautiful thing about rock bottom is that it gives you a solid foundation to build something better. She ended her speech, her eyes locking onto balcony where a beautiful 18-year-old girl with her mother's wide, knowing eyes was watching. Luna, to my mother Aria, who taught me how to sing when there was nothing else to hold on to. And to my daughter Luna, Aria finished, her voice cracking for first time with pure, untainted love. You are the reason I learned what unconditional ownership truly means. This is yours, baby girl. Every single note. Aria, the girl with no education, the survivor of the city's worst alleys, walked off the stage. She was not just a star. She was the architect of her own destiny, a billionaire CEO, a loving mother, and, finally, the undisputed giant of the industry. Her life was the ultimate, defiant echo against the silence of despair. Kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.